Today's episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by Growing for Market magazine. Which crops will pay back your investment in a hoop house or greenhouse? How does managing a greenhouse through the winter differ from summer growing? And which crops can just be overwintered in the field? Learn all that and more by subscribing to Growing for Market magazine. The writers are farmers, not journalists. They won't tell you how to grow, they'll tell you how they grow, so you can decide what works for your farm. Growing for Market is celebrating 30 years of helping local food and flower growers succeed with articles written by experienced farmers from around North America. Since 1992, Growing for Market is by farmers, for farmers. Plus, subscriptions start at only $30 per year. Whether you do farmers markets, local wholesaling, a CSA, or dream of starting a farm, check them out today at growingformarket.com. Request a free sample print or digital copy from their website, and podcast listeners can get a new subscriber discount of 25% off with the code WINTER when subscribing at growingformarket.com. I think Growing for Market magazine is an excellent and affordable resource for any grower. Today's show is also brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds.
Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud sponsor of the Winter Growers Podcast. Since 1973, Johnny's has supported farmers and gardeners with superior seeds, innovative tools, and pertinent information to help feed their families and communities and ensure their growing success. Our 40-acre research farm is the heart of Johnny's, where we trial thousands of varieties and tools every year. Our research team is dedicated to finding solutions to the ever-changing challenges growers face, including disease, environmental or insect pressures, and shifting market trends. We invite you to visit the Growers Library at johnnyseeds.com to find technical resources like the Winter Growing Guide, which has tips on planting and harvesting into the shortest days of the year. You can also find variety comparison charts, extensive Jang roller trial results, and more. The employee owners at Johnny's are working hard to make 2022 a great year, and we look forward to growing with you.
Welcome to the Winter Growers Podcast. Today, my guest is Katherine Nietmann of Moose Meadow Farm in Clark Fork, Idaho. After both going to school and farming year-round in Maine, Katherine and her husband, Spencer, moved to Idaho in 2016 to begin a four-season farm on family land. At the 48th parallel and at 2,200 feet in elevation, they have challenging winter growing conditions, with some winters receiving up to 10 feet of snow. But their combination of four-season farming experience in Maine, plus appropriate greenhouse infrastructure and techniques, have allowed them a successful start to their farm business, with a CSA, a winter online market, and direct sales to nearby grocery stores. Recently becoming new parents, Katherine and Spencer hope to shift the focus of their farm production to more winter sales to help lessen the load and demand of summer farming, and to have more time with their daughter, so that they can continue building a meaningful life for season farming. Great. So originally we were going to have both you and your husband Spencer, but we'll just have you today, which will be wonderful. And I actually first met Spencer a few years ago in Maine when he was working for a farm in Maine. And I believe your story is that you both went to school in Maine, met in Maine, and now farm in Idaho. So I'd love for you to describe a little bit more about your background and how you started a farm in Idaho.
Sure, yeah. Spencer was going to join us. He's with our young baby right now, so you just get me. He and I met back in, I think, 2008. We were friends for a long time. I was managing the farm at Bowdoin College. Spencer was a student at Bowdoin. We started dating after he graduated, had been out for a few years, and we both were working at different farms in Maine. I was managing the farm program at Kennebec Valley Community College after I left my post at Bowdoin. And Spencer did a summer at the farm on North Haven Island.
Turner Farm, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Spencer did a season there, and then he went on to manage the farm program at Point Lookout Resort, which is where I think you met him. And then Spencer and I were making plans to move out here. We're actually on his family's property in North Idaho. And so we had a couple years to save up money while working our various farming jobs before moving out here together. And so we had a pretty good plan in place before we landed, and also a good bit of savings too. So now we're here on his family's property. It's a 80-acre property in North Idaho, about 40 miles from the Canadian border. So we're pretty high up there. And we're farming on 1 acre. We have a fence around 2 acres, but that includes driving lanes, buildings, as well as production areas. So our production area is total 1. That's where we are.
Great. And so what were your farming experiences like in Maine, especially the 4-season farming, and how did those experiences inform the creation of your farm in Idaho?
So we had year-round farms, both of us in Maine. And the greatest part about our jobs was that we were getting paid. We were both salaried. We were getting paid basically to just learn. So yes, we made mistakes. Yes, we made huge improvements, but the income wasn't ever a stressor for us while we were working those jobs. So that was huge for us to just know that we had a salary, even if we made mistakes or a crop failed or whatever. So yeah, at Kennebec Valley Community College, I was working field plots. We had about an acre in the field and 2 30 by 96 movable high tunnels in which I grew year round. And so the produce from that fed area food banks and a little bit of the culinary arts program at that school. So there's a ton of student involvement. Students took produce home as well, fed their families. And Spencer's farm was mainly producing for the catering program at Point Lookout Resort. So he was, I think, less than an acre, probably between a quarter and half an acre in total, I think. Growing year round, one of his greenhouses was heated, also rolling high tunnels. I think they were 30 by 48, and he had 3 of them. So we both had 2 or 3 or even 4 seasons of, year round growing with high tunnels, both heated and unheated. But like I said, having that salary to back us up really made us feel free to experiment and learn things that we might not want to try if we were paying for it, or if we were getting we were in charge of our own pay. Yeah, I hope that doesn't make me sound too entitled. I'm just extremely grateful that we had that experience before we came here.
Yeah, no, I think that can be a deterrent for a lot of the 4-season farming techniques, because they do require a lot more infrastructure and a lot more experimentation. And yes, if you are doing it on your own, it is more intimidating because those mistakes can be costly.
Yeah, for sure.
So, going from Maine, which, as you know, is, pretty, there's quite a few farms that practice 4-season farming. Once you arrived in Idaho, were there any other 4-season farms that you knew about? Were you considered an anomaly, or did you fit right in?
Our neighbors down the road, they're a mile from us. They're totally awesome people. They grow year round in high tunnels. I think they heat one by now, and they sell to a small winter CSA. So we got here and we're like, oh, great. We fit right in. But then we've kind of realized that they're kind of the only ones, and they just happen to live down the road from us. I mean, there aren't any that I know of who grow vegetables commercially all year in our region. There aren't any others. I could be wrong about that, but there's no big farmers market scene. It drops off at the beginning of October, so there just really isn't a market for anyone through which they could sell. So we felt both we did feel like an anomaly, but it also felt like an opportunity. We figured, okay, we know how to do some things. It's a lot we didn't know how to do, but we know how to grow some things throughout the year. And I think customers are going to want this stuff. So as long as we can reach them, we don't have a whole lot of competition, competing for their consumer dollars. So we definitely tried to capitalize on that.
And what would you say were or are the differences between your experiences farming in Maine to Idaho? Maybe, the climate or those markets. What have you noticed are the biggest differences or even the similarities?
The biggest difference that we've noticed is that we're at the 48th parallel here, and where we were growing in Maine, I think was at the 44th. And so we have a little bit less daylight here, but we also have significantly less sunlight. And we didn't realize how big of a deal that would be. So it's just gray a lot here. And it definitely snows. We'll get 9 or 10 feet in a winter, but a lot of that snow accumulation comes from just like snow drizzle is what I call it. It just, will just snow little bits all day, every day for weeks, and the sun just doesn't come out. So even when you're having a high tunnel, growing in high tunnels, it definitely keeps the wind and the weather off your crops. But when there's no sun outside, you're not really getting the greenhouse effect. And it's pretty similar. Inside temps are pretty similar to outside temps. So that's been challenging for us here in terms of disease management, disease pressure, and just general growth. Because even when day length starts to increase in mid-February, if the sun doesn't come out, the plants don't really care that much. They're just not getting the intensity that they want. So in Maine, we were like, oh, this is easy. This is, relatively easy. The sun comes out, it gets warm, things grow, the frost clears inside. But here, that's just not generally the case. So row covers that we use, they're not doing the same thing that they did for us in Maine. You're supposed to pull them over the crops at night to trap in the heat that's accumulated through the day and unfurl them during the day so that the soil can warm back up. But in our case, if the soil isn't really warming up during the day and you pull those blankets on at night, you're just kind of trapping in moisture, and diseases can get out of control even though you're trying to do the right thing by keeping your plants warm. So we do definitely use the row covers, but we use them judiciously and try not to have them on for long stretches of gray days. We'll just pull them off even if it's cold so the plants can get some air circulation. And we have moved to heating more tunnels. Half of our greenhouse space is heated in the winter, and in Maine, I didn't have any heated in-ground growing spaces, and Spencer had one, but we're definitely doing more of that now than we were in Maine, and it seems necessary. On the flip side, our average low temperatures are, I would say, they're a bit higher than they were in Maine, so we're not having the extremes that we were used to there. It's rare for us to go below zero or to stay in the tens or below 10 for days at a time. That's very rare. So that's helpful for us here. The ground rarely freezes hard inside the tunnels. Obviously it does outside. So that's been a benefit here. It's just a little bit milder.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like a lot more snow too. You said 9 to 10 feet.
That can happen. It's not every winter that happens, but that's not uncommon. Yeah.
I would imagine that you have a lot of snow management to deal with in a bad winter, and that can, man, that can add a lot of extra work clearing high tunnels.
It's a lot of extra work. Yeah. We always, these days we're trying to keep staff on year round, but mostly it's like, well, if it's a heavy snow winter, we really need them. If it's not as snowy, we don't need them quite as much, but sometimes we're hoping for heavy snow just so we can keep them around. Silly as that sounds.
I'm hoping you haven't ever lost a high tunnel to snow load. Is that correct?
We did lose one.
We lost
one. It was just a stupid tunnel. We shouldn't have built it. It was a Crop King tunnel, and it just wasn't rated for the snow load that we have, but it was cheap, and we bought it in year one, and I think it lasted a winter and a half before collapsing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, what are the high tunnels and greenhouses you have now? Can you describe those a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. They're all from Nolt's, Nolt''S, Nolt's 34 by 96. And so there's 6-foot bow spacing. Oh, I can't tell you the gauge of the steel, but it's definitely rated for our snow load. I think people use them across the country, especially in the north. They're rugged. They're stationary. Ours are.
Any movables, or they're all stationary?
They're all stationary. Yeah. That was a decision we made when we first got here. Sometimes we wish we had movables, but it's too late to go that route because of our space right now. But
What was the reasoning that helped you to decide that?
yeah, it was cost, and in our first year, we were so intent on building 2 greenhouses, filling them up with crops, and just starting to sell that we didn't want to worry about prepping even more ground on which to move them. We just wanted to really focus on the soil in the 2 greenhouses, and it's expensive to amend your soil. So we just focused on that, and we were like, maybe we'll get movables later, but we're in a pretty tight spot because of trees, basically forest surrounds us. So we just don't have space now. We don't have a 300-foot long nice stretch on which we could move a movable. So
do you feel that, generally you've been able to manage somewhat of the disadvantages that can be the case by not having movables? Does it feel like you've been able to mitigate those challenges?
we'll see. I mean, we have some soil issues in one of our tunnels, and it would be great if we could move, have our tomatoes, for example, in different soil year after year. But since we can't, we're trying to manage it other ways, figure out what's going on and amend the soil differently. I think, yeah, if we had the chance to do it again, and money and time weren't issues, I think we would have put up movables, at least one, so we could rotate our tomatoes a little bit better. But since we don't have that, I think a lot of farmers run into, well, these are my parameters, so I'm going to work within my parameters. So that's what we're just trying to make the best with what we have.
Yeah. So walk me through what what would the cropping plan look like for one of those tunnels, especially since it's not movable. So what would, going from spring through the following spring, what would that look like?
Sure. So in one of our 34 by 96s that's heated, I'll go through that one. We'll start right now, I guess. So early fall, late summer, we're putting in winter crops. So there's some Swiss chard in there, some kale, some lettuce heads, some radishes. There will be arugula greens, mustard greens, and then a little bit of salanova. So those crops we'll be growing and harvesting those through the end of February. At that point, we'll flip the tunnel, and the whole thing goes to tomatoes, cucumbers, and bell peppers starting in early March. And we've got nice big transplants to go in. And at that point, we kick the heat up to 60. All winter, it's been at 32. I think we set it to 32. So then the hot crops, the tomatoes, cucumbers, and bell peppers, those are going all summer until about now. We literally just pulled them out, and it's September 2nd today, in case listeners want to know that.
Does that timing work well with those hot crops for the flip? One of the advantages of a movable is being able to extend that harvest season and window a little bit longer. So do you find that you can sort of time things well, and you get the most production out of those crops before you have to pull them?
Well, for us, yeah, the timing is good. Our early tomatoes, the ones that went in March, although they're grafted, well, they're usually grafted. We didn't graft this year because we had a baby, but they are usually starting to peter out, and it's just not that much fun to pick anymore. So those early tomatoes, yes, the timing works, and the bell peppers. We've gotten a ton of harvest, a ton of return on our investment off those plants, and so the timing is good.
And are you using any inner row covers for those heated tunnels in the winter?
No.
So just for the unheated tunnels, you have the row cover?
That's right. Yep.
What sort of the window do you have, like a, December window where very little regrowth, very little harvesting is going on? Do you anticipate having that?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. It really slows down between about New Year's and Valentine's Day. So 6, maybe 8 weeks of literally no growth. And if things haven't succumbed to disease, then we're still harvesting. It's not that glum. Like, winters can be really great, but yes, there is definitely a slow period from about New Year's to Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and I think you told me in your notes that you gross 2/3 less per week in the winter compared to summer, but the work is 90% less.
That's about right. Yeah. Less money, but we're putting our feet up way more. So
Yeah. And so like, talk to me, but do you feel that that balances out and makes it 100% worth the production in the winter, despite the less gross income?
yeah, absolutely. We love that winter schedule. It's income. It's a lot of work this time of year. It's a lot of planning. But once the work is done, we know we have income every week and a very limited number of work hours to put in. So it's about mid-October, maybe early November, our workload really just drops off. Once all of our roots storage crops are out of the ground, the workload just drops off. November, December, January, February, we're just working maybe 15, 20 hours a week. Mid-February, it starts to creep up 25, 30 hours a week, but it's very manageable. And we're even trying to skew our farm into more winter production because no matter what, it's cold outside, and there's never going to be very as many work hours in the winter as there are in the summer. So we figure, why not maximize the winter sales and try and reduce our summer hours. So we are trying to skew our farm a little bit that way these days.
I like that. That seems like a really good strategy. But I'm curious about the harvest, schedule and, in the middle of winter. I mean, how do you mitigate those challenges? For instance, if you have those 5 days of cloudy, cold weather, so it makes it difficult to harvest, say, in an unheated tunnel, how do you mitigate that?
We're harvesting every week, something 52 weeks out of the year. So we definitely had to have a plan to be able to do that. And in our case, for example, we have some Salanova lettuce in heated tunnel and some Salanova lettuce in an unheated tunnel. Same with spinach, same with the baby greens. So let's say I make an availability list on Saturday for our retail customers. Tuesday is going to be the harvest day. They get their product on Wednesday. So I make the availability list on Saturday. I'm taking the weather into account, but Tuesday comes around, we're supposed to harvest, and all of the unheated spinach, lettuce, and baby greens are frozen. Rather than panic, we just cut them from the heated tunnels. So we'll save the heated stuff basically until for emergency purposes or until that really cold, slow period that I talked about. So having the heated versus the unheated really takes us through those times.
Yeah. And then do you find that the, cost of I'm assuming you heat with propane, is that correct?
That's right.
Do you find that the cost of heating, based on that approach by using it more sort of in the emergency, time frame, does that offset it?
Honestly, we haven't done a detailed analysis of our propane costs versus production. So I can't give you hard data there, but we keep doing it. We're not losing money. It seems to make sense to us.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's hard. I mean, because at least here, in Maine on Four Season Farm, and we have, 2 heated high tunnels, and we use it for a similar reason as you mentioned, is that there are those weeks where you want to ensure that you always have something to harvest. So, and also having more reliable regrowth and, cosmetically beautiful produce.
Right.
It really helps. But that propane cost, is pretty astronomical from what I've found. It is high, so I'm always sort of in that point of like, how do you justify that? Obviously, both economically, but also environmentally. But generally, like you said, it's sort of the whole system. It's allowed the whole system to work. And
right.
At the end of the day, you want a whole farm system to work. So do you think you would shift to having all of those minimally heated in the future to ensure that, if you want to skew more of your harvest and your hours on the winter end?
We would like to have a heater in all of our tunnels. And I think we may still retain 2 that are heated constantly, but the ability to heat, say on a harvest day, heat an unheated tunnel on a harvest day, that would decrease our stress level for sure. So yeah, I think we are working towards that. It's just we're in year 5, and that is a project for down the road. Is all. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, and I imagine too, it would also help mitigate the fungal disease pressures with moisture, extra moisture in the unheated
For
tunnels.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a
Yeah.
huge difference, that dry heat. So talk to me about sales and your markets.
We are doing, well, in 2021, we are doing about 55,000 in microgreens, and that's both retail. We sell them retail and wholesale. We're doing about 45,000 in salad greens. So that's mostly spinach and we call it spring mix, but it's Salanova lettuce. And that's both retail and wholesale. Then we do 45,000 in a summer CSA. So we have about 100 households in our summer CSA. And we're doing a fall CSA this year that's new. It'll have about 80 households, 85 households, I think. That goes October through Christmas. And then the back half of the calendar, January, February, March, April, May, I guess, we just run an online store. So it's a retail store and it's, no membership, no minimum order. We update it weekly with what we have. People place orders or as often or as infrequently as they want and harvest once a week and deliver it to a central location. So yeah, between the wholesale microgreens, salad greens, tomatoes, and then our summer CSA, fall CSA, winter online store, that about rounds it up.
That's great. So the back half of the counter that you mentioned, that online store. So is there any reason not to do a CSA at that point? Like what sort of was that a COVID pivot? What determined your decision to do that?
No, it wasn't a COVID pivot. We were doing an online store since the very first produce we sold was through our online store in October of 2016. So we did that from the beginning and we wanted to, like I said, because there's no farmers market here in the winter months. So we just needed to find our own way to reach customers. So we launched that and it's been growing in popularity for a few years and now it feels like it's a good thing and we don't want to let it go. We'd like to move to a CSA in the winter, but we're honestly just nervous. The fall one is new for us and there's just so many unknown variables growing outside of the summer season that frankly we're just a little too nervous to jump into taking people's money up front and committing to them for those really cold months. So the online store, if all we can muster is 10 pounds of spinach in addition to storage crops, we're not disappointing anyone because we haven't made them any promises. So it's just a little safer for us. And since we already have that platform, it's easy to keep going with it. But some of our customers would definitely prefer a CSA and it would be easier for us managing in some ways to do the winter CSA, but we're not ready to take the dive yet.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the beauty of first come, first serve is it definitely is the advantage to the farmer. So,
right.
So what about local, grocery stores or food co-ops? Is there a demand for that? I mean, could you potentially sell all of your produce in the winter there?
I think we probably could, but we are more interested in the retail dollar when we have limited output, So, if we can get $10 or $11 a pound for spring mix retail versus $7 a pound wholesale, we're gonna go retail if we can muster it. So we are selling every last leaf and every last root retail in the winter, so we don't see the need to basically take a lower price. But that said, we do our microgreens year round wholesale. So the salad greens we stop selling wholesale when they run out of the fields, which is hopefully Halloween. We stop having it outside. And so then the grocery stores stop getting it, but our retail customers keep getting it. But the microgreens we sell to the grocery stores year round. And we started doing that mostly to just keep the relationship going with them. It was kind of hard to take a break for 4 or 5 months and then call them back up and say, hey, remember us? You want to buy our microgreens and salad mix? So we just, we're communicating with the produce managers weekly all year, and that seems to help.
And you find that the microgreens make economic sense. There's enough of a demand for them. I mean, they always feel a little bit like a sometimes they're trendy, sometimes they're not. So
Yeah.
have you found them to be pretty consistent in your area?
They are, fortunately. They're consistent and the demand is increasing. We're expanding our line, the different types of microgreens we grow, and the orders keep going up. So that's great. But I always feel like North Idaho is, I don't know, 5 or 10 years behind Maine in the food scene, or behind New England in the food scene. So if they go out of style in Maine, I figure we have 5 or 10 more years left. So fortunately for us, they are still in vogue.
Well, so describe your microgreens system and setup.
Sure. We're doing all brassica mix that has purple radish, pink radish, broccoli, mizuna, and red Russian kale in it. That's our primary mix. Then we do straight arugula microgreens. We do straight broccoli microgreens, and then we do sunflower shoots and pea shoots. And we grow those. We're seeding twice a week, harvesting twice a week until winter, basically. Then we're seeding and harvesting once a week. We put them in a germ chamber to get them to pop, put them out on the benches, and it ranges between, right now they're at a 8-day cycle, but in the middle of winter, they'll go down to, I think, a 12 or a 13-day cycle. To do that in the winter, we run grow lights over our benches. They're lighted mid-October through April, and then the plant house where they're growing is heated to 50, and that combo so far has allowed us to have high quality, big cotyledons and a 12 or 13-day harvest cycle. So yeah, they're about we aim for $1,200 per week in microgreens every week of the year, and it's just having that in our flywheel is just like it feels secure. As much as we feel like they might go out of style or they're kind of a fringe product, as a producer, they make us feel really comfortable.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely having that reliable sales outlet and product in the middle of winter when you may not be able to get that on other things is huge. Hey, podcast listeners, we're going to pause for a moment to hear from one of our show sponsors. Today's show is also brought to you by Tunnel Vision Hoops. Tunnel Vision Hoops designs and manufactures do-it-yourself high tunnels, hoop houses, and greenhouses. With an extensive array of products to help large and small growers become more productive, they have 11 different tunnel widths to fit any application and designs to stand up to weather conditions from coast to coast. Tunnel Vision is also a national distributor of parts and accessories needed to build, maintain, or upgrade an existing tunnel or hoop house. Check out their Tunnel Vision Hoops YouTube channel for instructional how-to videos to help build a great high tunnel or hoop house. Here at Four Season Farm, we have 2 movable high tunnels made by Tunnel Vision Hoops, and they are definitely my favorites. To learn more, visit their website at tunnelvisionhoops.com. Now, back to the show. So what about storage crops? What are you growing for storage crops, and what kind of percentage of your sales would those be?
So storage crops, we're only selling them retail, and we do garlic, onions, shallots, fingerling potatoes, like a red skin potato, a Yukon Gold potato type, beets and carrots, watermelon radishes, other various winter radishes, then a little bit of cabbage, a little bit of fennel, a little bit of kohlrabi. A lot of that will go to our fall CSA, and then the potatoes, garlic, onions, beets, carrots, those hopefully will carry us all the way through till we start harvesting new carrots in the spring. So,
do you have any traditional root cellars, or are you using walk-in coolers for the storage?
We're using walk-in coolers. We put up a second one this year. So we have 2. They're both, one's 10 by 12, one's 8 by 10, I think. That way we can manage 2 different temperatures and humidity levels, hopefully keep our onions and garlic a little drier and colder, and the roots a little more humid and a little bit warmer. Yeah, we hope to just fill them right up. But also we built them with room to expand into. So it's part of our long-term plan of increasing winter production.
Are those traditional compressor coolers or are those CoolBots? What are you using?
They're both CoolBots. Yeah, one is a CoolBot kit, like they sent us the walls and the ceiling and everything, and then the other we built ourselves and put a CoolBot in it.
And those have been reliable for you and consistent.
They're great. We have no issues with the product or the construction of either. But we do keep a spare AC unit on hand, like a new one, because we've had one go out, and that's enough to never want to do that again. So we do keep a spare AC unit on hand.
And what about your wash pack area? Where do you have that? Is it integrated in one of your high tunnels or is it a separate space?
It is in one of our high tunnels. The first high tunnel we built, it's actually 34 by 144. And so 96 feet of that length is in-ground heated growing. Then we have a polycarb wall up, and the rest of that space, 48 feet, is both our plant house and our wash pack. So it is a little bit crowded, but it's worked so far. And yeah, there's a polycarbonate wall. It has a separate heater in it for the plant house and a shale floor. We do 3 big like stock tanks for triple washing greens and then a washing machine spinner. We pack on stainless steel tables, and one of our walk-in coolers is in that space as well. So
yeah, and so essential with any 4-season farm because you need to have a warm space to keep those greens from freezing.
And keep our fingers from freezing.
That too.
Yeah.
Now, what about, your growing techniques? Would you consider yourselves 100% no-till?
We're not hard and fast on definitions. What we did is we used a rotary plow on a BCS tractor, walk behind tractor, to open up our fields initially. So we've opened up all of our fields that way, except for one field. We took the time and tarped it for a whole year. And that field was awesome. So if we open up any new ones, I think we'll do it that way. But we haven't used the rotary plow. We hardly use the BCS for anything since opening up our fields. But we do use a tilther. We use a broad fork. We're using those 2 implements just about at every bed preparation, bed flip. That's really it as far as disturbing the soil, but nothing more aggressive than that.
So walk me through a bed flip. What would that typically look like?
Depending on what's going in next, we're getting a lot or a little crop residue out of the ground. We might leave some roots or like paper pot chains in the soil if we're hand transplanting something. But if we're going through with a jang seeder, for example, or the paper pot transplanter, we might get some bigger roots or bits of debris out of the ground first. But then we'll spread an amendment cocktail on it. And it's a whole suite of things: blood meal, crustacean meal, feather meal, soybean meal, alfalfa meal, biochar, some worm cast. And then we're working it in with the tilther. We'll do a pass down and a pass back. Sorry, before the tilther, we're broad forking, tilting, and then it's ready to go. So if the crop is out, we can clean it up, prep it, and have it ready to plant again in probably 45 minutes for a 96-foot bed. And we do a lot of that. So that's how it goes.
And I heard you mention the paper pot. So are you using that for most transplants or?
We do all of our Salanova lettuce in the paper potter and a few other things, but the vast majority of our transplanting is Salanova lettuce. So yeah, we'll also use it for beans and beets, but mostly it's the Salanova lettuce. Then we use the wind strip trays, those like hard, rigid plastic trays for plug starts. And then we use a jang seeder for direct seeding things. And a few things, carrots, we hand seed pelleted seed for all of our carrots. And also radishes, we hand seed.
Is that because the jang hasn't worked for those, or the spacing? What's the reason?
I'm sure the jang could work, but we haven't gotten it to work, and so rather we just feel like we know we can get it perfect if we hand seed them, and we don't want to do any thinning. So I think we just haven't wanted to put the time into the figuring out the jang with those seeds, radishes and carrots, though I'm sure it could work if you do the trials.
How many rows per bed are you doing for those carrots? Is it tight spacing or?
We put the seed down in 6 rows across a 30-inch bed top, and we aim to do them an inch apart. So we do that, and then they're very uniform, and we don't have to thin. So it's very labor intensive, but you do it once, and then the results are good.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if you or Spencer have used the 4-row pinpoint seeder, but for pelleted carrot seeds, so the one we have, Elliot actually had to bore out the holes to make them deeper so that they would fit the pelleted seed more perfectly, because otherwise they end up crushing them. They're not quite deep enough. And so interestingly, you have to make modifications on some of these tools to make them work. But that's also because we're doing 12 rows to a 30-inch bed of carrots.
Right.
So, 3 passes.
That's a lot.
Yep. Yeah. And that would be a lot of hand seeding. So
yeah, I don't want to do that.
No. But anyway, there are ways of doing it. I mean, we played around with using raw seed, with another hole, and typically it can end up being too thickly sown, but then we just use those for the baby carrot sales. So
perfect.
Usually you find a way to make it work, whatever it works out. Yeah. So you've recently entered motherhood. How has that transition been going for you with the farm and lifestyle and everything else?
Well, it's going great. It's a huge change. It's like the biggest change of our lives, which sounds like a truism, but in fact it is. Our baby June, is with either my husband or I constantly. We don't have any childcare, it is challenging sometimes. We want to maintain a professional work environment, blah blah, and here we have this, baby who's either cracking us up or crying or whatever. But she keeps things light, and Spencer or I just has, like, if we're both out there, we can often be working while she's playing in her pack and play or on the ground or whatever. But one of us has to be on her, basically, paying attention to her and less to our work. So Spencer and I, as the owners, were putting in a lot less work hours than we thought we would. But we anticipated that to some extent, and we do have enough labor that we're getting, nothing has fallen by the wayside this season. We're getting everything done. It just feels weird to be the owners and not putting in as much work as our employees. That's kind of a threshold that we crossed this year.
Understandably.
Yeah.
But I know that the mental shift is challenging. So, yeah. So then how many employees do you have, and how many do you employ year round?
So we have 2 women who work full time on the farm with us. So in the summer, they're at 42 hours a week, and we'll keep them on at 15, 16 hours a week all year. So November, December, January, February, March, they'll be at about that level. And then we have another woman who comes just on harvest days twice a week. And we have a delivery driver who comes and drives our wholesale deliveries twice a week for us.
And are they, do they reside on the farm, or are they coming from off farm?
They're coming from off farm, which in our region is challenging. Housing in our region is really crazy right now, and we're kind of out there. Our biggest nearby town is called Snadpoint, and it's a town of 8,000 plus or minus, and it's a 45-minute drive away. So those who find housing in Snadpoint still have a commute, So it's not ideal, but our crew right now is all happily housed, in various situations. So, but we don't have any housing on the farm for employees.
But it sounds like you've been able to make that work. So that's great.
So far. Yes. So far we have.
Yeah, no, that is a big challenge. I think it's time to shift into our lightning round questions. Number 1, what is the hardest part of farming?
For me, it's customer service.
And why?
It's probably just my personality. I just have a really hard time. I have an interaction with a customer over email or phone or in person or whatever. And then I just wonder, did I handle that the right way? Are they upset with us? Are they going to keep buying from us? Or are they going to like go tell their friends that they should never buy from us? My mind just chews on those things. And if customers are pleasant to us, that like makes my day. But if they have a problem or an issue or unpleasant to us, then I just like think about it for hours. So I have a hard time with customer service. It's not what I expected to be a hard part of running a farm business, but it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, isn't the moniker that, there's no way you're ever going to please everyone. So
yeah, for sure. I need to tell myself that more.
No matter what, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, that's a challenging one. Next question. What gets you up in the morning?
Literally it's our baby, June, but metaphorically, I think for both Spencer and I, we just truly love what we're doing. We love where we're living. We feel like we're living out the dream we've had for, years. And we love being in charge of how we spend our time, kind of just in charge of our destiny. It's like, yeah, we just have this inner drive that we wake up with.
What do you love besides farming?
I'm a cyclist. I love riding my bike. There's a ton of gravel road, like Forest Service roads around here. And so if I can get away, I'll get on my gravel bike and go ride for a couple hours and get some great views and not see any cars. I love doing that.
How does wildness enter into your farming practice?
So we're called Meadow Farm, and really if you look at like a Google Maps view of our property, our farm is on one half of our open meadow, and then the other half of our open meadow we call the Moose Meadow. And we very consciously, like, we could quadruple the size of our farm. We have the land base to do it, but we just want to keep that for the moose. And basically we just want to have as little a footprint as we can, and we want to maintain the rest of our beautiful location for the wildlife and untrammeled nature.
So how many moose do you see?
We'll see them every few months throughout the year, but this summer we've had a particularly high number of moms and babies and moms with twins, which is really fun to see.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
How, will they just wander out into that meadow and you'll just sort of, be farming and notice them? Is that typically how it would work?
Yeah. We'll see them anywhere. There's a kind of a swampy area right beside our house, and they like that swampy area. And so we'll see them around our house frequently. And then there's a creek that runs through the Moose Meadow. So that's a favorite haunt of theirs. They'll go over and drink from the creek and then run down our driveway. And yeah, it's really fun you're working somewhere and you can hear them crashing in the woods and look up and see them, or you just happen to glance and see them running by. It's pretty fun.
No, that sounds great. When I lived in Colorado, I would take trips up to Yellowstone every now and then, and I remember seeing quite a few there. And the babies were definitely very cute and gawky and
yeah, they're so funny looking.
Oh, that's great. What is your gift to give on behalf of people and the land?
That's a tough one. Like I said, we want to have as little a footprint on the land as we can. We feel like in a way we are gifted the land we're on, and we want to do the best we can with it and preserve it in its natural state. So if we can get the highest quality produce that money can buy out into the world and do it in a way that minimizes environmental impact, that's what we're striving to do.
What is your favorite smell and your least favorite smell?
Favorite smell is sweet peas. They're heavenly, and we always plant them. I have them in my home garden, but I also put them out on the farm just really for like aromatherapy so that everybody can smell them. Yeah, they're quite wonderful. And least favorite for me anyway is arugula microgreens. I really I really can't stand it. It started when I was pregnant. I had a strong aversion to it and I just haven't gotten over it. So
Wait, describe does it smell, different than like what arugula smells like? How would you describe that smell?
I think it does smell different. It's more potent than arugula. I can't say why. It's more potent. And when I'm cutting trays of arugula microgreens, my nose is like right up in it, so it's hard to escape.
That's a new one. I'm trying to think like some
Yeah.
of, the more popular bad smells have been like rotting potatoes and rotting
Oh
onions or
yeah.
rotting brassica, but arugula microgreens, that's a first.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of applies to all the microgreens, but arugula is just the strongest.
Yeah. Okay, what's your favorite way to relax or your favorite self-care activity?
Bike riding really, again, is my favorite way to relax for sure. If I can get out on my bike, I'm like giddy. It's like one, I get to like be out with the wind in my face, but especially now that we have a baby, it's like, oh, this is like my time. This is time to just do whatever I want, and I get to be cruising down the road. So that's it. We also read a lot. We spend a lot of time reading and cooking. Cooking the stuff that we grow is like the most rewarding thing I get to do every day.
Hmm. So yes, what is your favorite crop to grow, cook, and eat?
I didn't think this one through. If I had to give you my quick answer, it's winter squash. I love growing winter squash. I love cooking and eating winter squash. Mostly the like, not so much the waxy delicata types, but like the more chalky kabocha types. Totally my favorite.
How would you prepare it?
My favorite thing to do with them, I call it creamy squashy noodles, and it's basically like hippie mac and cheese. You like steam the squash and then mash it and mix it with pasta, and I like crispy fried garlic in it. So, and some nutritional yeast and like salt and olive oil. Mix it all together in this big creamy mash. It's delicious.
Sounds great. What is your learning edge?
So I think this is a way of asking what's something we're bad at. Is that
No,
something?
no. We all have things we're good at and room for improvement. So,
Okay, right.
so yeah, like where as a farmer do you feel like is a learning edge for you? Like what's something that's challenging that you strive to improve?
Sure. Well, despite how much work we put into them and resources, we're not there with tomatoes. We graft them, we fertilize them monthly, we prune them weekly, we trellis them, we de-leaf, we flower prune, we pollinate, and still we're not we don't get the reliable, even, steady yields that we would like for 12 or 16 weeks. They're always starting to like peter out at 8 or 10 weeks of picking. So we're constantly trying to improve on that.
I'm curious, did you notice a difference going from Maine to Idaho with growing them? Were there any noticeable differences there, or have you had similar experiences?
I can't say we've noticed any big differences.
And what
I think
about
it's us.
yeah, and what about the grafting? Did you see an improvement there with grafting? You mentioned that you did grafting.
Right. We grafted both in Maine and here. And it definitely, grafted plants versus ungrafted plants, there's definitely a big difference, and grafting is the way to go. But even with how much work that takes, it's not like a shoe-in for success. So
Yeah, yeah. And finally, last question, how will you grow old farming?
we hope to grow old farming. We also hope to be able to choose to farm at some point. We both love this work, but we don't want to have to do it for income forever. So we're saving for retirement. We're just too young, I think, to have a definite plan for farm succession or anything like that. But maybe we'll pass it on to our kids. Maybe we'll pass it on to an employee. Who knows? we would like to think that our farm will continue even after we're not here or we're not working on it daily. But we'd like to reach a point where the farm still exists and we can kind of waltz in and out and do as much or as little work as we want. Maybe that sounds like a pie in the sky dream, but that's what we hope.
Yeah, no, I like that. That sounds wonderful. So how old is June? She's how old now?
June, 7 months.
7 months. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I got too early to tell if she'll have any interest in taking over the farm, but I'm sure you're building a wonderful foundation for her. So
hope so.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you so much, Katherine. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, and give my best to Spencer, and good luck with your fall and into your winter season.
Well, great. Thank you so much.
Today's show was produced by me, Clara Coleman, with support from No-Till Growers. Special thank you to Willie Breeding for the theme music. Thank you to the patrons at patreon.com/no-till-growers for helping to make this show possible. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.